And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another YouTube reading guide series. Today is the 8th of an initial series of 11 videos I'm releasing over the next few weeks, each of which is going to cover a specific DC universe-wide event. I've created these guides, initially at least, as a byproduct of creating my massive Superman reading order, which I'm actually releasing interspersed with these event videos. To create the Superman guide, I had to read almost 1,700 comic issues of everything involving Superman from 1991 all the way through to 2011, and that meant reading a lot of DC events. So I thought, given I was doing that, why not use that knowledge to build some of the internet's most detailed reading maps for those events? Unlike the Superman guide I've been showcasing, that takes the form of a Google sheet split into 14 different tabs. The maps that I've made for DC events are generally going to be infographics where that's warranted, such as today's Our Worlds at War infographic. Each event gets its own map, and these can be viewed for free on my website. And this playlist is going to contain every single DC event video in chronological order, taking it up to an 11 video playlist in total, at first at least. If you're interested in the Superman guide as well, but you've only come across this through the events and you're not watching the Superman playlist, don't worry, that Superman playlist is going to contain these videos as well. Quick bit of scene setting. I've read every single issue that I'm talking about. I almost always read every single issue for everything I ever review. The very, very few occasions, which is probably something like 0.1% of the time, I can't track down a particular issue. I always make that very clear. So in this case, I've read every single issue we're talking about for the Our Worlds at War event, and I've split it into three categories. Green are those that are essential for reading an event. They include key points, plot twists, criteria. Um, Amber are those issues that are related to an event. In other words, they're impacted by what's going on, but they're non-essential. And red is those issues that are token to an event. So in other words, they only have the faintest link to an event, if any link at all. Often it's just the branding on the cover that ties them in, and that's about it. Speaking of which, if something is a solid line, that means it's a branded issue. If something is a dotted line, that means it's an unbranded issue. That might not make a massive amount of sense to you until you see this, which is the Our Worlds at War reading map. This reading map you can see here covers all 46 issues as part of Our World at War, gleaned from both the branding as well as a whole bunch of recommendations and reading guides online, almost all of which are wrong. And then I formed them into this, a recommended reading order of all the issues for a completionist, split into essential, non-essential, and absolutely token. Just have a quick look at this. You'll see at the top, I'm just going to zoom in, we have our branding. Now, this is actually branding from the issues themselves. So the issues here, these three, which we'll talk about in a moment, actually aren't branded at all. And then there's a whole period where Our Worlds at War was branded as Prelude to War. Then there's a period it was branded as All Out War. And then a period it was branded as Casualties of War. And even then a period where it was branded as World at War Aftermath. In addition, what you can see here is that in a change from our normal uh, regularly scheduled programming, I guess. What I've done is I've gone left to right instead of top to bottom. So rather than having a vertical map, I've gone for a horizontal map here. It just seemed to feel right for some reason in this particular case. So as you can see, in the middle, we've got the green issues. Above the green issues, above the essential issues, we have our related issues, and I'll discuss all those. And below the green issues, we have our red issues or our token issues, and I will discuss all those as well. Obviously, these are all red issues in line, but we'll discuss that as and when we get to it. Oh, zoomed out a bit too far. Anyway, this is the map. This is something that you can just look at on my site. It's infinitely scalable, it's high resolution, and if there's anything wrong with it, please let me know and I can just tweak it live online in the cloud. Um, Before I dive into what the actual issues are and the recommended reading sequence here, what is Our Worlds at War? Well, Our Worlds at War was a 2001 universe-wide event published by DC Comics. The crossover, which occurred mainly through the monthly Superman titles and Wonder Woman titles, also included a series of character-themed one-shots, and it dealt with the heroes of the DC universe facing the threat of a new, yet another one, I know, cosmic threat called Imperiex, who was attacking Earth for the purpose of using the planet as like ground zero to reboot the entire universe. Random. It's worth noting there's no central Our Worlds at War series. So it's not like Our Worlds at War issue 1, issue 2, issue 3 as a main series like we normally see for DC events. All this is loads of Superman tie-ins, loads of Wonder Woman tie-ins, and then loads of random one-shots. So, with that in mind, let's start at the left and let's work our way through. So this is a little part of the map that I like to call foreshadowing, and that's going to be these three issues here. And if you've been following my Superman reading guide, you'll realize that these are from that. But I really think these are important. If you're reading Our Worlds at War, you should really read these three issues. The first one is Man of Steel 114. You can see this on the cover. It's a triangle issue 28, I believe it is. But it's all in my Superman reading guide and obviously in the written guide for this as well. There's Man of Steel 114. It's a related issue. You can read it and it's pretty good, but you don't have to. We then get into some essential issues. So we have Action Comics 777, which then follows directly in with Action Comics 779. If you're wondering where 778 is, you'll need to check my Superman reading guide, but trust me, it's nothing to do with Our Worlds at War. We are then getting into the Prelude to War branded issues. So for those, we're going here, and in fact, you can see them up at the top here. Prelude to War. So let me zoom around a little bit and have a bit of a look. Right, okay. So it starts off with here, Superman 171. This is an essential issue. It actually introduces Brainiac and the return of Lena Luthor, Lex Luthor's daughter. What we then have is a related issue you could read after this if you wanted to, which is this Green Lantern one up here. That's Green Lantern Our Worlds at War, the one shot. It's a related issue. It's kind of a cute story with Kyle and Jade, so not bad reading, but it's definitely not essential. After that, we have Adventures of Superman 593, which is this one here. Now, this is an essential issue that actually also introduces the return of Manchester Black, a character who's now in the Suicide Squad. I think we last saw him in What's So Funny About the Truth, Justice in the American Way. After Adventures of Superman 593, we have another essential issue, and the one to read next is Batman the World at War. I know, don't get overexcited. It's an essential issue in which Superman discovers the Metropolis Project and the Doomsday Contingency. I know, very, very mysterious. And that is then followed by this, which is Superman. This is Superman Man of Steel 115. So as you can see from the cover, this is when Darkseid arrives. It does say in that to be continued in Action Comics 780, and we'll get to that in a moment, but not quite yet. So before we get to Action Comics 780, which is this one here with a red cloaked figure on it, we've got a couple of decisions to make. Firstly, we've got a related issue up here, which is Young Justice Our Worlds at War. It's a one shot. It's relatively self-contained, just some time hijinks. I put it in as related because it has got some panels that overlap with Nightwing, Our Worlds at War, the one shot. And also, yeah, it kind of generally kind of touches base a bit with the overarching story. It does also reference something happening in Superboy, where Superboy has kidnapped a baby. Long story short, if you're interested in that, well, you're in luck because there's a token issue here, Superboy 89, which is set after Young Justice, Our Worlds at War. It's set after Action Comics 779, the Batman one shot, and it basically fits in here pretty well. It's a token issue. I wouldn't read it, but it has got the branding, as we can see in the corner right there, Prelude to War. Anyway, if you want to ignore those or if you want to read those, it's up to you. But after Superman Man of Steel, the next thing to read is Action Comics 780. This is an essential issue. Really interesting because this is where Lex meets Darkseid. Also, this shows the return of the General, who is one of my favorite DC villains. He's kind of rubbish, but I've got a soft spot for him. Anyway, after that, that then moves smoothly onto this, which is Superman Our Worlds at War Secret Files and Origins one shot. This is an essential issue, hence it's in green. It's got some crazy stuff happening in it with Zod killing some key characters and doing some wild stuff. It does have a fleeting one panel reference to a villain called Virox from the Infestation story arc, which is in my Superman reading guide. I don't know why that villain is mentioned. It's not relevant and it doesn't make any sense, but there we are. So that takes us almost to the end of that branding. The last two things, well, there we are, Prelude to War branding. The last two things to keep in mind is that there's a Supergirl issue here which is related. It's Supergirl issue 59. You can read that at this point if you want. It's kind of the aftermath of the events that happened in these essential issues. And also at this point, there is a Wonder Woman issue, which is Wonder Woman 171. This is a token issue. It only really mentions Darkseid and Imperiex, and just the final panel kind of locks it in as happening here. This Wonder Woman issue does state to be continued in Superman 172 and JLA, Our World at War. But to be honest, I mean, it's just not really very good or interesting or necessary. So that is that middle area there saying Prelude to War. Sorry, the bit on the left there, that's all that up to the Wonder Woman. So now we're going to look at the middle area, which is All Out War. So let's look at this. Do you know what? I'm not going to zoom in too much. Let's just leave it here. We can see Superman on the left. That's Superman 172. It's an essential issue, and it says to be continued in JLA, Our World at War. That is a one-shot, and it's an essential issue. It actually references Young Justice issue 35, which you don't need to read. And then it also involves the death of a couple of key characters. One of them I'm not going to mention. The other one I kind of will. It's basically Aquaman. Spoiler warning, obviously he doesn't stay dead, but the disappearance of Aquaman and actually the disappearance of Atlantis that happens in this issue will eventually lead into and dictate the JLA arc for the JLA ongoing series, which is the JLA Obsidian Age arc. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. That's all in this JLA Our Worlds at War issue. After that, you can, if you want, read Young Justice issue 35. It is branded, but like I say, you don't have to read this at all. It's a related issue where Young Justice get drafted to support the Paradox. If you want to know what that means, you have to read the issues, really. Anyway, the next essential issue to read after JLA Our Worlds at War is Adventures of Superman 594. This is an essential issue. It shows the death of a key character, as well as you can see from the cover, the return of Doomsday. And it does say to be continued in Man of Steel issue 116, which, as you can see, it does move on to that. Before you move on to that, though, there is this Nightwing one-shot here. It's Nightwing Our Worlds at War. It's a related one-shot, and it does intersect with, as I mentioned earlier, some panels from Young Justice Our Worlds at War, from the Prelude to War part of this. Okay, right. Where were we? Superman Man of Steel issue 116. This is an essential issue. It does say in this to be continued in Action Comics 781 and Wonder Woman 172. I wouldn't worry about that. The thing you need to read after this is actually JSA Our Worlds at War one shot. This is essential and has an awesome Jay Lee cover. I mean, look at this. I know I love Jay Lee so much, but his artwork is just banging. It's got a key thing that happens here where a major enemy stronghold or key point, I think probably we're saying, gets destroyed. So it's pretty awesome. After that, if you want to be a completionist, there is a Superboy issue. This is Superboy issue 90. Very token. It has got the branding, as we can see in the corner, and it does mention Apocalypse, but otherwise, seriously, I wouldn't worry about it. Anyway, let's get back into the fray. What we have here is Action Comics 781. This is an essential issue. And as an essential issue, is definitely one that needs to be read after JSA Our Worlds at War and before the next issue in this. And the next issue in this is, he says, just moving over. Oh. The next issue in this is Wonder Woman 172. That's an essential issue that features the death of a key character and the return of a key character. Straight after that, we've got Supergirl issue 60, which is a related issue. As you can see up here, this is Supergirl fighting an Imperiex probe, so it's kind of cool. But also, after this sort of savage Wonder Woman 172 issue, we also have a couple of token things. We have the Wonder Woman Our Worlds at War one-shot, which is token and irrelevant. It's basically a full history recap of, like, Wonder Woman and everything to do with all this. It's just a recap issue. It's not really very interesting. As well as that, we have this issue, which is Batman 593. You can see the World at War, All Out War branding there. This is actually an explicit story arc itself. It's Sanctuary Part 1, which is part 1 of a two-parter about a random alien refugee in Gotham. Now, before I show you where that goes, as you can obviously see here, let's just zoom out a little bit. As you can see, that is where I've drawn the line as All Out War ending. And the reason for that is is that the next issue, which is a token issue, I wouldn't recommend reading it, or at least not as part of this, and it's not branded. Oh, sorry, it is branded. There we are. Ha, my mistake. Casualties of War. But this has nothing to do with anything. It's Sanctuary Part 2. It's put here so this two-parter makes sense if you read it, and they are branded issues, but they're totally token. Once you read 593, you really have to read 594, but honestly, I wouldn't bother. Okay, let's go up to the rest of the Casualties at War part of this, which is up here. Let me just scroll over. Casualties of War. Okay, let's start off with Superman 173, which is this. It's called The Sacrifice. It's an essential issue in which shit gets crazy. War World appears, all sorts of stuff starts happening. That says to be continued in Adventures of Superman 595, which of course we'll see here in just a second. But before that, there is a branded issue here, Young Justice 36. This is related to what's going on because it's shit kicking off an apocalypse and all sorts. Basically, it starts off in a slightly confusing way. It starts off in media res, which, if you don't know what that means it starts off in the middle of the story and it's on Apocalypse. And it really made me think I'd missed something. But then throughout the issue, it flashes back to explain how they got there and so on. It also involves the death of a key character. What this then does, and this is probably worth pointing out here, is this then ends saying to be continued in Impulse 77 and Superboy 91. But, and I've got it on the map here, it needs to really be read in that order. So after reading this, you need to really read Impulse 77, which is this issue. And then after that, you then need to read Superboy 91, which is this issue. So it's really important you read those three in a sequence. Anyway, getting back to the essential stuff, we've got Adventures of Superman 595. That's an essential issue. After that, we've got a related issue here, which is the Flash Our Worlds at War one-shot, where Flash essentially stops all the parademons. It's kind of wild, kind of cool, but not really essential or mentioned in any subsequent issues. There's also this token issue down here, which is the Harley Quinn Our Worlds at War one-shot, and thus rises Harley Quinn's popularity from the early 2000s. This does end saying to be continued in Man of Steel 117, but to be honest, it's an irrelevant issue. It nominally, I guess, explains one slightly weird thing that happens with Jimmy Olsen in Action Comics 782, but honestly, it doesn't explain it very well, and you can just ignore it. Anyway, there's that token issue, there's that related issue, and so we are unsurprisingly now looking at this issue here, which is the Superman Man of Steel 117. It's an essential issue, and I mean, I'm not going to give any spoilers of what's going on, but cool stuff happens in it, basically. So just zooming out for a moment, let's have a look at where we are. Sorry, too much. What we have here are the final few issues. So we have Action Comics 782 here. This is the next one after Man of Steel 117. This is essential, and this is basically the finale of the whole thing. I mean, it looks kind of wild. Look at Superman like burning in fire and covered in blood. It's pretty wild. And then that is kind of continued in this Requiem issue, as it says Requiem on the cover. This is the world's finest Our Worlds at War one-shot. It's an essential issue, that's why it's in green, and it's set after Action Comics 782. That then ends the entire thing. That's basically the key sequence there. And there's two random irrelevant issues or token issues here. We've got Supergirl 61. It's a token issue. It's got nothing to do with this event, even though it has the branding. And the cover is a massive bait and switch. It hasn't got an alien trying to eat her head, basically. That's nonsense. And then we've got Wonder Woman 173, also a complete token issue. It's a really dull recap of the whole World at War story from Wonder Woman's point of view. So I just could not care less. And that is it. That is the entirety of Our Worlds at War. So if you've been following it or reading it through, those green issues in the middle are the ones you need to make sense. If you were going to bind this or get a custom bind or an omnibus, those are the issues you want. The issues in orange, yeah, maybe if you want. And the issues in red, I would wholeheartedly not recommend. There we are. That's the whole thing. Our Worlds at War. But wait, I hear nobody say. What is this Worlds at War aftermath stuff? Good question, no one. So basically, About 10 years, well, not 10 years, maybe 8 years after Our Worlds at War, the ongoing Superman Batman series of the time decided to do a tie-in. Actually, why is that green? I'm going to change that to red. There you go. Um, they decided to have a story arc called Big Noise, and Big Noise is issues 64 here, 68, 69, 70, and 71. And as you can see from the cover of it, these covers have branding saying Worlds at War Aftermath. God knows why. Um, well, issue 64 doesn't, but everyone collects it together and it is a prelude to the other four issues. These are all token. I mean, despite the branding, other than a few references here and there to the war being over, I basically didn't find any kind of clear or coherent links to Our World at War story. It definitely doesn't add anything to it. So, whilst a lot of online reading guys do say you should read these, don't go out of your way to track them down. It is wasted effort. Anyway, I just wanted to address that as the elephant in the room, as something people talk about, which just is not true. Here's the map. Here's the whole map. As ever, it's on the website. If you want to check it out, please do. You can zoom around as I've done. Hopefully, you have a bit better control than I have. But ultimately, you can zoom around, look at it, do whatever you want, use it to inform your own reading. Our World at War as a whole is a pretty good event. It wasn't really critically acclaimed, but I quite liked it. In fact, I liked it a lot more than some of the preceding events. And a lot of the issues and a lot of it is quite a clear, coherent set of necessary and essential issues without too much fluff or gumph around it. So I've got to be honest, I did quite enjoy it. And there we have it. In case you're interested in knowing where these resources are, so the guides, the maps, and so on, they're all available on my website. They're all available for free. You can go into the website, which is nogodsorkings.com, and download the Google Sheet for the Superman reading order, or you can go on the website and look at these reading maps for all the various DC events and a whole bunch of other things I've got on there to your heart's desire. If, however, you are interested in a written version, of this guide, then it is available on Amazon. I've recently just self-published it. It is the cheapest possible tier you can get on Amazon. So it's 79 pence UK, 99 cents American, and so on. It's free if you're on Kindle Unlimited, and there is a free sample on the website as well. The reason I put this onto Amazon is kind of a proof of concept. I'm interested to see if people are interested in the written guides, whether or not people want to pick them up. And also, it's a good way for me to bat off all the people that are going to be in the comments asking for a Batman guide. If you want a Batman guide, I don't really particularly have any interest in doing one, but I will do one if this book gets 500 reviews. So if this book gets 500 five-star reviews, then I will start doing a Batman reading guide at some point. I don't think that's going to happen, but there we are. Of course, feel free to support the channel by picking this up. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, the best way to support the channel is by picking up one of my other books, which isn't a non-fiction reading guide. It's actually a fictional, completely original superhero story. It's prose, so not a comic or words, but it's about superheroes in just a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic dystopic idea. The first four books of the series are out, and if you want to support, please pick that up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay classy.